Hello, world. It's Dr. Deborah Thompson here from One Health Lessons. I am very pleased to introduce you all to Dr. Sarah McAnulty. She is the executive director of Skype a Scientist, which is a nonprofit in the United States that I am a huge fan of because it really brings STEM folks to talk about STEM to children. So as you can imagine, it's exactly what we all love, and it's great to have more advocates in the world. So welcome, Dr. Sarah. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So like I said, I'm a huge fan, but before we get into Skype a Scientist as a group, can you just enlighten us? How did you become a squid biologist?
Good question. I mean, so I was interested in squid from when I was a little kid. I know like a lot of little kids at the time liked dinosaurs, but I was watching, a bunch of National Geographic videos that I got out of the library, and they introduced cuttlefish, and that was pretty much it. Cuttlefish, for anybody who doesn't know, they're related to squid and octopus, but they're just slightly different, but they pretty much look like a squid. So I really think that they're amazing animals in general. They can change color to communicate with each other, to match the background, to blend in, to stand out, depending on what they want to do. And I think they're just some of the most amazing animals on the planet. So when I was young, I decided that I wanted to work with them by any means possible. And so I went to Boston University, studied marine science. Then in the summers, I worked at the Marine Biological Lab in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, working with cuttlefish. And then took a brief stint in Germany because I had studied marine science, but not molecular and cell biology. And what I really wanted to do was understand the immune systems of squid. That's what I wanted to study. So I knew that if I started a PhD program then, I would have been toast because I didn't have any molecular and cell biology background. So I worked in a lab with obese mice in Berlin, Germany, and then started grad school. And now here I am, squid biologist, fully formed. Here we are.
That is amazing.
That's the
So
Cliff Notes version of how I got to where I am.
awesome. So, did you have a role model when you were younger? Like you heard about cuttlefish through what, the Discovery Channel, did you say?
Pretty much. Yeah. Like just Discovery Channel, National Geographic. We didn't have cable, so it was all rented from the library. Yeah, anything I could get my paws on that had to do with cephalopods, I wanted to learn about it.
And did anybody ever say, forget it, that's not
Yeah.
your mission? Yeah, so how did you overcome and what's that?
I was just pretty hard-headed as a kid, and my mom always would be like, "You can whatever you want to do, you can do it, just do it." And other folks may have disagreed, but I was like, "I'm sure somebody has a job working with squid," but I didn't know scientists when I was a kid. I didn't know really any. So when we thought about who would work with squid as a job, we were like, my parents thought, well, maybe you'd work at an aquarium, maybe you'll work in SeaWorld. Like, we don't know what the heck, who you should aspire to be. And it really wasn't until college that I met a scientist working on cuttlefish. Someone from the MBL in Woods Hole, Lydia Methger, came and gave a talk at Boston University's Marine Science Department. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. Finally found it. Ended up working with that lab for 2 years. And then that kind of kicked off the career going forward.
Whoa. So after that visiting lecturer came, did you approach him afterward and say, you have my dream job? Is that the
pretty much? Yeah. There was like a lunch that you could go to where you like eat pizza and talk to the scientist. And I went to that lunch and said, hi, like I gotta work for you. And she was like, okay, you should talk to Roger, the guy who runs the lab. So I played hooky from school one day and went down to Brown University, which was a 45-minute train ride away, because I heard from coincidentally my best friend who works with me today at Skype a Scientist that, hey, I think that Roger guy is giving a talk at Brown. And I was like, I'll be right there, and ditched and went and sat through a pretty similar lecture to what I'd seen before. And afterward I said, hi, I'm Sarah, I would like to work for you. And he was like, you're a little young, because I at the time was a sophomore in college. And And I was like, well, you're either hiring me this year or you're hiring me next year. So you might as well hire me this year because you're not going to get rid of me. So, he was like, okay, crazy. And so I applied and wrote a similarly extreme cover letter, which I wouldn't recommend students do. It happened to work for me. And they were like, either she is totally, I don't want to use the word crazy, but either she's crazy or she's just really enthusiastic. So they took a chance on me, and here I am.
Realize it was the latter, super enthusiastic.
Yeah. She was very, very exuberant about cephalopods. Yeah.
I love this story. And the marine lab at Woods Hole is outstanding.
It's really great. Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah, world renowned. So well done. Just being a sophomore. So second year in undergrad. So that would have been what, 19 years old? Something like that.
Yep. Not fully formed brain, but there I was. So.
And so what about the immune system in squid did you find interesting, and why should people care about that?
So at the time, so when I was a senior in college, my mom got cancer. She got pancreatic cancer. And so that is what got me interested in immune cells and immune systems broadly. So I took an immunology course after that whole thing had happened. And from there, I was like, man, I really wish I could bring immunology and squid together. So it wasn't so much that I already knew a lot about squid immune systems. It's just that I knew a fair amount about immune systems and I knew a fair amount about squid. And so I thought, how can we bring these two really, really cool things together? Because what kind of unifies them is that the immune system is really all about communication. And squid, the thing that I really liked about them was their totally alternative form of communication, which is their color change. They talk to each other that way, and the rest of it is mostly to hide from everybody else, but or confuse prey in some cases. But like the thing that drew me to both of these fields is cellular communication and animal to animal communication. And maybe I should have seen the writing on the wall and known that science communication is where I should go. But at the time, that didn't occur to me. I also didn't really know that that was a job. So that's why I was like, okay, I really want to find somebody working on the immune systems of squid. And there was a guy working on that at the University of Connecticut. His name's Spencer Nyholm. I feel really lucky to have worked with him. I just applied to the one grad school because I figured if I don't get in, no problem. I'll just continue playing with fat mice in Germany. It's fine. The obese mice that I worked with were incredibly cute. Fat mice are... It couldn't be cuter. So anyway, I was pretty happy at my job there. So I figured if I don't get in, no worries, but I did. So that worked out. And in terms of why you should care, the thing that I was actually working on at the time, it was a pretty unformed idea. Like I want to work on squid immune systems. I don't necessarily think that everybody in the world should learn about squid immune systems, but here's why we were studying them and why it is relevant to everybody. The thing about these little squid, they're called Hawaiian bobtail squid. They're about this big. They're not very big. Actually, you know what? That's one right there, doodled on my whiteboard. They have this bioluminescent bacteria that lives inside of them in this little pouch where they store them called the light organ. The bacteria produce light that the squid then use to blend in with the light coming down from the moon. So they're nocturnal. They're swimming around at night. If it's a super cloudy night, they'll use their ink sac actually to cover up the light coming out from the bacteria. And if it's a bright moonlit night, no clouds in the sky, it's a full moon, they let a lot of that light out. So they can control how much light comes out based on how bright it is that night in the water. And so that's the purpose of the symbiosis in terms of the squid's everyday life. The reason it's really cool to study like from a human impact perspective is that we can understand how animals and bacteria that are in beneficial relationships like we have in our gut, how they like establish that relationship and how they maintain that relationship over the course of a lifetime. And particularly the little piece of that whole big puzzle that I was looking at is how the immune cells of these little squid can tell the difference between bacteria that are helping and all the other bacteria that they're going to encounter in the seawater, which is a lot of different types of bacteria. Seawater is full of bacteria. And so they have to be pretty good at knowing who's who. So that is cool from that little like microcosm perspective, but understanding how all sorts of different animals accomplish this, how they know the bacteria that they should have in and on their bodies and those that they need to eliminate, that's really important to understand, because a lot of diseases in humans are caused by those communities of bacteria in the body getting a little bit messed up. And so like IBS, we think also obesity, diabetes, like all sorts of gut associated diseases are associated with odd, compared to the general population, microbiomes, which is to say the bacteria that live in your gut. And so that's why I studied it. That's why the government would fund it. That's why I think it's super cool for anybody to know, even if you really don't care about squid. It's just important and cool.
That is so cool.
Thanks.
That is so cool. And when you said that, you know, the water is full of bacteria, it reminds me of, I had a conversation the other day of somebody working in Florida who's working on a project to inject an antibiotic into coral.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Most of the bacteria that live in seawater are totally benign. Like that's just where they live, the same way giraffes live on the savannah, bacteria lives in seawater. You know, it's just like where they hang out, and most of it's not hurting anybody. Maybe other bacteria, sometimes they fight with each other, but yeah, there's just with climate change, there's a lot of pressure on coral, and they're getting sick easier than before. And there's actually a really cool group working in Hawaii. I think Coral Resiliency Group there, Shale Matsuda, if you've heard of him, he's one of the scientists working there, super cool scientist. And he and the whole group working there through Ruth Gates's lab. Ruth unfortunately passed away a couple years ago. She was one of the most phenomenal people I've ever met in science, but very sad. But her lab is continuing the work that she started, and that's all about like basically putting pressure on coral when they're just tiny little babies to be able to survive higher heat and higher acidity or lower pH. And the ones that survive these little conditions that they have in little tanks in the lab will then go forward to be what they hope to breed into what they call super coral, coral that can handle the pressures that are coming with climate change, or for a lot of coral are already here. And that work is awesome. It doesn't relate to, I mean, it's all symbiosis related because all coral have these what's called zooxanthellae, these little microbes that live in their skin, in their bodies actually, that give them their food. So anyway, that's another cool thing that's happening in symbiosis.
Awesome. And that's when the coral are gone, then the habitat for these fish and everything else around disappears, right?
Yeah. It's a keystone species, as they say.
Keystone species, yeah. So another question for you with the bacteria in the water. So is it, you say most of the time it's, you know, benign, not a big deal, but what about, is it caused by water runoff from like farms or from people, or is
that's a complicated question. One of the things that, like, as far as I'm aware, the main problem with runoff of nutrients from humans and the shore is that algae grow like big time. And so the problem with that is that it blocks the sunlight that goes further down, and it zaps, like really just sucks up all of the nutrients in the seawater around that specific area. So I'm sure that runoff affects the bacterial community for sure. But like the headline problem associated with runoff from the shore is mostly algae related. So that's like, yeah, that's the main problem.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. It reminds me of there was an intern who wrote a blog article on the website onehealthlessons.com about red tide.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big problem in Florida.
For sure. And
US.
lots of places. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. We know a little bit about your background. It's fascinating, and I'm so happy to be having this conversation. But let us know, what is Skype a Scientist? How on earth did you even think about starting this? Because nothing like it existed at that time. And yeah, let's dive in there.
Sure. So the year was 2017. It was January 2017. I was in graduate school, about little more than halfway through. And I was spending more time than I probably should have on Twitter. And Trump had just been elected. So as you might imagine, that led to a lot of anxiety within the scientific community, fears for what that change in power in the country was going to do to scientific budgets, to scientific literacy, et cetera. And so I saw all this negativity and I was like, there's a lot of energy here. Currently, the energy is mostly negative, but how can we kind of harness all of this anxious energy and funnel it towards something positive? I'm a pretty anxious person, and historically I've funneled it into getting stuff done. And I thought maybe I can help other scientists do a similar thing. And so at the time I just was like, let's just give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen? So I threw out 2 Google forms, one for scientists, one for teachers, said, sign up, I'll match you up. At the time, I didn't have a computer program or an algorithm to do that matching for me. I thought maybe 100 classrooms would sign up. 800 signed up like very quickly, and 500 scientists were in the database. I felt really, really lucky that so many people were interested. I used Twitter primarily to get the word out, and a lot of people spread the word, and it just sort of took off from there. So that first matching period of time was I may have bitten off more than I could chew. So I sent a message out to my fellow grad students. I was like, listen, there's beer in the conference room. Please come help me solve the biggest puzzle I've ever been tasked with. It was like the biggest Sudoku puzzle of my life. So I had to figure out, like, okay, this person's in the East Coast time zone, and they want a marine biologist who's available Tuesdays at 2 p.m. And I don't have to like scroll through and find. Anyway, that happened. And then my best friend, he was getting his PhD at Boston University at the time. He now works at AstraZeneca. He was like, I could write you a computer algorithm to do that for you. And I was like, oh my God, please do. So at the beginning, I was just flying by the seat of my pants. I just I saw a problem. I tried to fix it. And then the rest we figured out along the way. So David Jenkins is my friend's name. He wrote us an algorithm and has been improving it ever since. Every semester, we take feedback from our teachers and our scientists and say, what worked for you, what didn't? And then we try to make it better for the next year or semester. And then from there, we've built little things in based on feedback. We have a live stream series that we do once per week, where I bring in scientists who I think are pretty good science communicators, and in whatever topic that is. We like to cover a broad range of topics, everything from, we had one scientist who worked on how things we send up to the International Space Station like attach to the space, like the docking mechanism. That's a thing I didn't know the first thing about when I started that interview. And then, we had a one on whales. We've had them on like conservation biology. And we also have things like science policy, working in the government to do science stuff, also science illustration, like science and art coming together, all sorts of stuff. Science journalism is one we'll have this fall, wildlife rehabilitation, chemistry, green energy, all kinds of stuff. I try to really cover all scientific topics to the best of our ability. And we also have a wide representation of scientists. So it's not just all of the same type of person. We have people from all different backgrounds that we include to make sure everybody is represented and can see themselves in science, because that is part of the main goal of Skype a Scientist, having everybody feel like there's a place for them in science, that they belong in science, that there are people like them in science. That's pretty much most of it. Yeah.
Awesome. And in January, which will be One Health Awareness Month, One Health Month, that's when we will talk about One Health.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the Skype a Scientist live series.
That's awesome. So when a scientist signs up through your program, volunteer. They're all volunteers, right?
Mhm,
And they
mhm.
just want to give back to the community and
Yeah.
to the global community. Um, how how does it work? So you said you just punch it into, you just log in, you register. Do you choose a language? Do you choose what topic? Can you help the listeners understand a little bit?
Sure. So as a scientist, you sign up, you got to be in graduate school or further along in your career. If you didn't go to graduate school, but you've been working in industry for like 10 years or even 5 years, if you're a professional scientist, you are part of this for sure. And graduate students and up, if you can call it that. Sideways is fine too. You can sign up. You tell us what your area of expertise is. You tell us some important stuff for matching, like time availability, time zone. And you tell us how many classrooms you want to be matched with over the course of the semester. The options are 1 through 5. So you might, sign up and get 5 classrooms in the first week after you sign up. You might sign up, wait a month, get 1, another month passes, you get a second, because we match everybody once a week. And so all of our classrooms that sign up get a match within that first week, but classrooms are signing up every day. At all times of the day and night. So just because you don't get a match right away doesn't mean that you won't. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you fill out a Google form and then you're in the database. If you want people to know that you're in the database, we have a scientist search tool that's available on our website. That's for teachers who maybe they want something super specific to be covered in their class. They can type in snakes, bees, space, Mars, whatever. And then all the scientists who put those words into their keywords when they signed up, they will populate in a list, and then the teacher can request that scientist by name. So if you want people in your social circles to request you by name, advertise that and tell them to write your name in, and you'll get a match quicker that way.
You're gonna match quicker? Is that what you said? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so the people who are listening, we are typically either in veterinary medicine or environmental health or human medicine, one way or the other. We could be biomedical engineers. We could be epidemiologists, people from all walks of life who actually, really want to contribute to the greater good through a One Health approach.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, sorry, now my other cat is here.
I love cats. So that's great.
She wants to be a part of it.
Right.
So it sounds like we sign up and say, these are our strengths, this is what we're trained in. And then is it a Q&A? Is it like a question and answer? Or do we actually teach a lesson? How does it set up?
Great question. So when you get a match, typically you and your match will talk kind of about the needs of that group. It's almost all Q&A. You might give like 5 or 10 minutes of introduction, and then you can go into the Q&A. Sometimes you can ask the teacher ahead of time if they can send questions from the students, or you can just wing it. I usually wing it, but I understand that not everybody likes to just wing it in front of a sea of faces. So I understand if you don't want to do that. And so we try to keep it pretty open to whatever the needs of the two groups are. And so typically it's not lessons, it's not lectures. It's all about talking to each other, because we want the students, first of all, to have their curiosity drive the session. We want them to get the information that they want to know, and we want them to feel like they've really gotten to know you a little bit and not just have you talk at them for 45 minutes. So that is why we designed it the way that we did. And yeah, that's how it works.
Awesome. Okay, so it sounds like it's a 45-minute meeting. You can decide on what time zone, what language as well.
What language? Yep.
Okay, and where are these students? Are they
all
in
over the world?
States?
Everywhere. We are in 75 countries. I think, let's think about this. 70%-ish are in the United States. The rest of them are all over the place. Canada, Mexico, Europe, Asia, everywhere. So yeah, that's why we really need you to tell us the time zone, because we don't want to match you with somebody that has class at 2 a.m. your time. So we definitely take time zone into consideration when matching.
That is really considerate of you. Thank you for that.
Yep.
That's awesome. And then say if somebody talks about their background and talks about One Health as an interest, then if the teacher of that classroom wants to follow up and have a One Health lesson be taught, awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's really incredible. It's just another way for scientists and STEM folks in general to become better communicators.
Yeah, we want to give everyone as much practice as possible, because we need all hands on deck lately with science literacy, for sure.
This has been such a pleasure. Do you have any last words for our listeners? Because they are either aspiring scientists or STEM folks, or they're well into their career. It sounds like you've created this from scratch, which is phenomenal. Any advice?
Yeah, just if you see a problem, try to fix it. That's my number one piece of advice. If you see a problem in the world, don't assume somebody else is going to fix it. You try to fix it, or find people who are working on it that you can help. Because like I said, we need all hands on deck. There are a lot of threats facing us from all angles in this year 2021. So we need, like, maybe the problem that you feel equipped to fix is in your mind smaller than a what you perceive as a bigger problem. But maybe you're the perfect person to fix that problem. So just tackle what you feel like you are the person to do. Yeah, we need everybody doing something.
Yeah.
There's so much to do.
Yeah, exactly. And moving in the same direction, teamwork between people of different strengths, right? The One Health.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Take the One Health approach. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Doctor. Thank you so much for this conversation. I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as me, and I'll see you next time.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Onwards and upwards. Take care.